Well, the Trump administration's crackdown on immigration is now shifting its focus to migrant families and children.
Three sources familiar with the plan tell NBC News that U.S. immigration agents are working on two new operations. They'll arrest migrant adults and their minor children, regardless of their criminal histories. Remember, the administration initially said it would focus on migrants who had committed crimes.
NBC News senior Homeland Security correspondent Julia Ainsley has been covering this, of course, for us. She joins us with more on her reporting. Hey, Julia, good morning. So what are some of the details of this new operation, and when do we think it begins?
Well, we think that it could be underway even now, Savannah, but sometimes they won't exactly tell us about these operations until we start to hear from them, either from the family members or lawyers or advocates across the country. What we're hearing is that they're going into families. These are people who have final orders of removal, but not necessarily criminal histories, meaning that the only thing that they may have done would be a civil violation of immigration law rather than actually, which is a misdemeanor, rather than any kind of violent crime, which, as you pointed out, was the first target when this administration decided to announce mass deportations. They're also getting more warrants to be able to go to children who came in unaccompanied and were released without court dates. They're trying to track down those children, get them in the court system, and make sure that they show up so that they could eventually be deported as well. And Savannah, this could all be very complicated for them because, of course, children get more protections under this system. It's harder to deport children, especially those who come in unaccompanied. And when you hold a family before they're deported, you have to hold them in family detention. And children have only been held by Health and Human Services before they're released into the country. It's unclear what they would do if they did a mass sweep of unaccompanied children, where those people would be held, where those children would be held before deportation is really a mystery because it's never been done like that in such a large scale before.
Yeah, so Julia, I mean, speaking of family detention, you've reported this week the Trump administration is working to bring back those family detention centers. They were closed under President Biden, but there are some potential challenges there, right?
Yeah, actually, Joe, some news here. As of last night, the first families are now sleeping in family detention centers. The first one to be officially opened is in Karnes, Texas. That's a family residential center that was in operation under the first Trump administration. We should point out the Obama administration was the first to use family detention. But the way it's being used now, Joe, is completely different. And that's where they could run into some of those legal challenges and logistical challenges. Previously, this was to hold families who had recently crossed the border before they were released with court dates. And by a court order, they could only be held for 20 days. Now we're talking about families who have been uprooted, people who were living in the United States, sending their children to school before they're deported to their home countries. So this is a very different population that you're dealing with, and it's unclear if they'll be able to deport them within that 20-day time frame that's mandated by the courts, and how they'll get access to legal counsel, and if they'll be able to appeal that decision before they're deported. Joe?
So, Julia, is that some of what is different, like, this time around? Because it's not the first time a policy like this has been in place. Like, even back to 2014, the Obama, the then Trump, again now Trump and Biden administrations have all tried to, deter families and unaccompanied minors from even crossing the border in the first place. So is what you're mentioning what makes this different?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, some of my colleagues and I've been talking to people who work in facilities like this. And in the past, they said, we really felt like we were providing a humanitarian service to some of these people who had just crossed the border. They were coming in. Some of them were getting medical care for the first time that they had needed for a long time before they were sent out into the United States to pursue asylum claims. The population they're getting now is going to feel completely differently about the reason they're in detention. These are people, like we said, who were living their lives, who've been uprooted from the United States. Some of these children may have no memories of the countries they're about to be deported to, and families might not have any plans for how they're going to live their lives when they go back. And so it's a really different way to use detention. But those families that I'm told that were spending the night in Karnes, Texas last night, they are not recent border crossers, Savannah, which means they too have been arrested from the interior of the United States.
All right, Julia, thank you very much.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.